Gnostic teaching on martyrdom. Welcome to Pleroma Pathways, apocalyptic and mystic Christianity, where we explore esoteric and apocalyptic texts. In this exploration, we delve into the Gnostic perspective on martyrdom, focusing particularly on the teachings found in the Testimony of Truth. These texts challenge conventional notions of martyrdom, emphasizing knowledge and spiritual awakening over the misguided zeal of dying for a cause. The concept of martyrdom in traditional Christianity is often associated with the idea of self-sacrifice for one's faith. Martyrs are seen as heroic figures who die for the name of Christ, hoping for salvation in their death. However, Gnostic texts like the Testimony of Truth critique this idea, presenting martyrdom as misguided and harmful for those who fail to grasp true spiritual knowledge. In the Testimony of Truth, the author addresses the misconception held by many that martyrdom ensures salvation. The text describes those who think that confessing, "We are Christians," through their words, without the power of true understanding, will lead to salvation. The foolish, thinking in their heart that if they confess, "We are Christians," in word only, but not with power, while giving themselves over to ignorance, to a human death, not knowing where they are going nor who Christ is, thinking that they will live when they are really in error, hasten towards the principalities and authorities. The Testimony of Truth, 44:10-15. These individuals, according to the Gnostic view, fall into error because they act out of ignorance. They believe that martyrdom through death will lead to salvation, but the text asserts that this is a flawed belief. In the Gnostic tradition, it is knowledge, not physical death, that leads to spiritual fulfillment and salvation. The death of the body cannot cleanse ignorance. Only knowledge of the truth can transform and renew the mind, making a believer responsible for the resurrection of the dead at the second coming. As it is written in Daniel 12, verse 2, "Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt." Knowledge of the truth is essential, as it brings the responsibility of the resurrection. The text also challenges the idea that God desires human sacrifice, arguing that if the Father were to demand such a sacrifice, it would be an act of vanity. If the Father were to desire a human sacrifice, he would become vainglorious. The Testimony of Truth, 45:2. For the Gnostics, God is not concerned with the death of the physical body. True spiritual growth arises from understanding and the internal realization of one's divine connection. This stands in stark contrast to the common view that death for Christ guarantees entry into eternal life. Furthermore, the Testimony of Truth critiques those who believe that martyrdom is a means of perfection. It emphasizes that these martyrs are, in fact, empty, as their death does not lead to true spiritual fulfillment. The text states, "These are empty martyrs, since they bear witness only to themselves, and yet they are sick, and they are not able to raise themselves." The Testimony of Truth, 45:20-25. In this view, martyrdom does not equate to spiritual perfection or salvation. Instead, it is seen as an empty act that only bears witness to the individual's misguided understanding of what it means to follow Christ. True salvation, according to the Gnostic teachings, comes from self-knowledge and an understanding of God's truth, not from dying in physical suffering. The text goes on to redefine martyrdom, asserting that the true witness is the one who knows themselves and understands the truth. This, therefore, is the true testimony. When man comes to know himself and God, who is over the truth, he will be saved, and he will crown himself with the crown unfading. The Testimony of Truth, 45:30-45, verse 6. This radical shift in understanding emphasizes the inner journey of spiritual awakening rather than outward actions like martyrdom. It is through the cultivation of wisdom and personal transformation that one becomes aligned with the divine, not through death. In this sense, the Gnostic view of martyrdom is deeply introspective, valuing enlightenment over external demonstrations of faith. The Testimony of Truth further reinforces this idea by explaining that salvation comes through knowledge rather than through a literal sacrifice or martyrdom. The text teaches that Christ came to reveal the truth, which is eternal and liberating. The Gnostic faith views the physical world, with its sufferings and death, not as something to be dismissed as mere illusion, but as part of a greater cycle of transformation. This cycle is understood as comprising two distinct ages, one akin to winter, marked by mortality and decay, and the other likened to summer, representing renewal and the resurrection of the dead in the age to come. Through the understanding of spiritual truths, one prepares for this transition, embracing the hope of resurrection and the fullness of life in the coming age. In conclusion, the Gnostic teaching on martyrdom, as found in the Testimony of Truth, radically redefines the concept of martyrdom. It critiques the idea that physical death, particularly through martyrdom, is a pathway to salvation. Instead, salvation is found in the knowledge of the self and the divine. The Gnostic path is one of spiritual enlightenment and inner awakening, where understanding and transformation are the true markers of divine connection, not the act of dying for a cause. As we reflect on this, it is important to remember that those who rush into martyrdom will not be resurrected, as stated in Isaiah 26:14. They are dead. They will not live. They are deceased. They will not rise. The ultimate salvation lies in the resurrection of the dead, as knowledge brings responsibility for it, guiding one to true spiritual transformation.